Hi there, my name's Diane Wittry, and I'm the conductor of the Allentown Symphony in Pennsylvania. And I have with me today on the call Ezra Barnes and Erin Partin, and they're both wonderful actors that participated in a concert that we did in March 2019, where we did Mendelssohn's The Midsummer Night's Dream, and we decided to add some actors to this to bring us the text of Shakespeare, which has such a wonderful flow. And so before we talk about that performance and that piece, I wanted each of them to tell you a little bit more about their background. So we're going to start with Ezra. And Ezra, you and I met actually in Norwalk through the Shakespeare Festival there, and we've worked together quite a few times. But tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and when I got out of college, the first acting job I got in 1985 was touring with the National Shakespeare Company, which was it had a big name, but it was a small company. It was 13 actors on a bus, on a Greyhound bus, and we traveled around. One of the actors drove the bus, and we would do Shakespeare plays all over the country. So I saw America and did Shakespeare. And that was really my introduction to it. Later on, I got professional training as an actor, and then subsequently founded and served as artistic director of 2 Shakespeare festivals, one in Westerly, Rhode Island, and then one in Norwalk, Connecticut, called Shakespeare on the Sound. And they were both outdoor festivals in parks. And that's how I met you, Diane, because you were the conductor of the Norwalk Symphony Orchestra. And we did Peer Gynt, right?
We did eventually do Peer Gynt, and I think we met quite a few times talking about different types of things that we might do together.
Yeah.
And I remember it was such a beautiful setting you had there, really amazing.
Yeah. So I did that, and then on a parallel track, while I was running theaters, I was also working as a professional actor and director. And now I find myself back in Brooklyn, where I grew up, and I do a mixture of live theater, did a mixture of live theater before theater died, and rumors of its death are greatly exaggerated, and television and films. So you can see me on things like Orange is the New Black and The Sinner and Jessica Jones, which is a Marvel TV show on Netflix. I removed Jessica Jones's spleen. She doesn't have a spleen anymore, thanks to me.
Wow, that's amazing.
Not that it matters.
We're gonna have to check those out.
Anyway, so that's my story. I'm a jobbing actor who also teaches young actors, and it's a life in the theater. That's what it is. And it's hard to predict, but it's also very rewarding.
That's fantastic. That's great. Well, and Erin, I know that you've done quite a lot of Shakespeare work, and we loved having you here. And I know that you've also, both of you work with Shakespeare Festival here in the Allentown area. Tell us a little bit more about your background.
First of all, I want to say I saw you remove that spleen. I didn't know that was you. And now I'm like, I have to go back and watch it again. That was you. I'm a huge Marvel fan. Well, let's see. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and now find myself living in Delaware, which is where I got my master's in classical theater. And yes, Shakespeare is kind of my bread and butter. That's what I love the most. I think I saw my first Shakespeare play when I was 13. I saw Much Ado About Nothing in the round and was like, I need to do that. Something about it, the language, the beauty of it spoke to me, and kind of like music, you know, it pulls you in a certain way. The beauty, the richness, the nuance, and figuring out how to make it clear, like figure out the puzzle before the people get there so that you can deliver it and they can just receive it. I just love doing Shakespeare. And after getting my master's, I kind of traveled around the country. I work at different theaters doing mostly Shakespeare around the country, and hope to be able to get back to that. I met my husband in grad school. We both got our masters at University of Delaware, and we now have a little lady who's 9 who is putting on plays for us on a daily basis during this thing. And so we put on little plays in our backyard right now. But yeah, it was such a pleasure working with you guys, because I love pairing what we do with the classical text, with the beauty of that music. And I just, it was a great gift. It was really, really wonderful.
That's fantastic. You know, when you were mentioning your daughter, I had in my mind visions of Felix Mendelssohn and his sister Fanny. They grew up, you know, wealthy, and they had a very big mansion of a house where they had an actual theater inside the house, and they also had these gardens. And literally every weekend they did performances. And that's one of the reasons that the Midsummer Night's Dream Overture was written by Mendelssohn at the age of 17, was for one of these weekend performances that their family put on. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so it's very fitting. So, you know, both of you worked at the Shakespeare Festival, and we have a great partnership with Patrick Mulcahy, and this is a festival that happens every summer at DeSales University. Unfortunately, this summer it's not happening. But why don't you each talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done with the Shakespeare Festival right here in the Allentown region?
Well, I got to work there for 2 different seasons. I think my first time there, I worked there for 1 season and got to meet that wonderful company. There are several artists who both teach at DeSales and then are a part of the company. And then they bring in all sorts of either students that are in the program and getting ready to leave, or alum that come back. But it's just such a tight-knit, wonderful family of artists. And it was a great pleasure. And then it was like 4 or 5 years before I came back and was able to do more shows. My daughter was like 2.5, I think, when we went back, and they welcomed her with open arms. And it's such a pleasure to work there. That group of artists are so welcoming and smart, and they have such great spaces too, the black box and then the regular theater. To play in both of those spaces is really lovely. That black box is so intimate, and you can hear the audience breathe around you. And I don't know, I had such a lovely time.
What shows did you do?
Which shows did I do? Let's see. I did Measure for Measure.
Were you
Isabella? Yeah.
Oh,
which was so fun too, doing it on a Catholic campus. I felt like I had to be really on point, you know, like it was my second time approaching that role, but I felt a different kind of pressure because I knew that actual nuns would be coming to watch me, and I wanted to do it with such integrity for them and make sure that they felt like I was honoring the choice that they had made for their lives. So that was fun. And at the same time, we were also doing The Importance of Being Earnest. And I was Cecily, so complete opposite ends of the spectrum. So I was, you know, a young, flighty, blonde, but smart young woman who was infatuated with love, and then a woman who was like, stay away from me, I love God. So very different roles that year. And one night, actually, I was in the dressing room, and we would go back and forth. You know, sometimes you do one during the day and then come back and do the other one at night. And I remember getting dressed for Importance of Being Earnest for the very first part. And I went on, I think I didn't go on until act 2. And so I would sit and curl my hair. I mean, it has curl, but I would add ringlets in different places to give it extra bounce. So I'd sit and curl my hair for like 40 minutes, you know, in different spots. And I was talking to my dresser and everything. And she's watching me the whole time. I put on my dress, corset, all the stuff, and then go to put on my shoes, and then get out to the hallway and realize I've put on my Isabella shoes for Measure, which are very, you know, a nice boot, but very brown and stern. And I was like, oh no, and I didn't have time. I ran back, I was like, my shoes! And I ran to get in place and went on stage and did the whole first scene trying to hide my shoes, you know, and doing all these things. And then between scenes, I changed shoes quickly into my lovely little pretty Cecily shoes. But such a great group of people. We had so much fun I remember just having a blast working there, and they're just so welcoming. It was a delight to work there. Anytime I get to even do anything with Patrick, I'm all for it. He just runs a beautiful, beautiful program over there.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, you know, Ezra, you stepped into the role with our production of Midsummer Night's Dream on very short notice. I think perhaps it was like 3 days. And talk about what that's like to suddenly get this call and suddenly have to learn the whole thing that we were doing.
Well, preparatory for this interview, Diane, I wrote down all the times I've done a Midsummer Night's Dream.
Oh.
1987, PCPA Theater Fest in Santa Maria, California, National Theater Conservatory. So I played different roles, okay? So I was Philostrate, then I was Peter Quince. In 1991 in Westerly, Rhode Island, I played Demetrius. In 1999, I co-directed a production that used the Mendelssohn music and had dancing. It was directed by Maggie Harrer, who was a dancer and a theater director. That was in Oradell, New Jersey. In 2000, for Shakespeare on the Sound, I directed a production of it. In 2003, I did the Mendelssohn with the Dartmouth Symphony Orchestra. I directed a group of kids in 2007 for an organization here in Brooklyn, and they did Midsummer and I directed it. And then in 2019, I came and did the thing for you. So I've played so many different roles now in Midsummer Night's Dream, and I pretty much know it. So there wasn't actually that much. There were a few speeches that I had to learn for this one that I didn't quite know, because I've never played Oberon through. But really it was so familiar to me that I just basically, I just knew I could do it. And if you get the opportunity to do it, you have to seize it, because it's as Erin was saying, it's a blast from another world. It's another kind of theatricality that actors don't get to enjoy, because you don't get that thing with, you know, so many theater productions, the music is pre-recorded. But here you are with a symphony orchestra, and the sound of a symphony orchestra is unlike anything else in the world. It's, you know, it's not amplified, for one. You're hearing the actual instruments in the space. And I did that so you see, I just said, okay, sure.
Well, we're so glad that you did, because I mean, you were just phenomenal.
And I've known Patrick for quite a while. I used to audition for him, and it wouldn't work out. And then it did work out. And for 2 seasons, I did two different seasons there. I was in 1776, which is, and then I was in a production of Romeo and Juliet. And those were the 2 that I did at PSF. But as fellow artistic directors, he and I, you know, would talk over the years and check in with each other.
So, you know, one of the challenges I think about our production is that we didn't go straight through the play. And so, you know, Ezra, you've done this play so many times, and I'm sure in your mind you've memorized it in a certain order, and the same with you, Erin. And we kind of just pulled out little tiny scenes and then put them to enhance the music. So what was that like, where you have to almost rememorize something that you've learned and done so many times before? Who wants to answer?
I'll go. Yeah. I mean, for myself, I've done this production, full production 3 times, but always playing the same roles. You'll see from the recording, I tend to be a shorter human. So I always played Hermia. And so I got to hear a lot of that language that I ended up doing with you. But I had never been able to play Puck or Titania. And so it was a great pleasure for me. And knowing the full production, I think helped. It lended itself to this experience because I knew what had happened in the in-between. And it made it very easy for me to know where dynamically I needed to be for that next moment or that next chunk, because I knew the flow of the whole story. And it was so fun. I mean, there's one speech that I ended up doing as Puck, which is actually Puck and all the fairies talking together. And I was delivering it just as Puck. So I made the audience the rest of the fairies that I was giving instructions to them. So it was a fun challenge, but very rewarding.
That's great. And how about you, Ezra?
I just wanted to come in the right place. But you remember, like, we had to work a couple of those moments to integrate the lines with the orchestra so that we were all sort of working together. And that's really, like, I think pretty much my mind was just on, making sure. You want to make sure with a symphony orchestra that you enter at the right time. That's important.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because different than doing this play without the music, then you're in total control of the pacing. Exactly. And you're only relating to the other actor or actress on the stage. But there were so many sections where you had to start with the music, and you had to actually pace it so that your phrases didn't end too early. Yeah. So that, if you'd done it too fast, you would be standing there and we'd still have music. It's not like we could just suddenly jump 3 bars. And, and that whole pacing of how that worked with, as you know, very little rehearsal time when you're on a union clock with the orchestra.
Right.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, it's such a treat to watch you rehearse with an orchestra, and you see that the time constrictions are so. I mean, of course, we're on a clock with stage productions, but the orchestra is very different. That's a very, very, everybody's really used to, okay, we've got 30 seconds to work this. We're going to work this for a minute and a half. It's very interesting to watch and to see those musicians working with the musicians and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's something that I think that's what really makes the difference between levels of conductors and their success is their ability to understand how to use your time. Because there's always infinite numbers of things you can fix and enjoy and do again. But I'm always calculating in my mind, if I do this thing one more time, does that mean I'm not going to finish the piece? I'm going to be 1 minute short of time at the end of the rehearsal finishing this piece. And so literally, particularly with this type of work that's a long work, you can get lost in it really easily and sort of enjoy rehearsing. I've got a timetable that I'm trying to keep to. And sometimes I even have to tell a musician that wants to do a section again, I literally have to say, I'm so sorry, I can't do that section again. We can talk after the rehearsal about it, but I've got to keep moving or I'm not going to get to the end of the piece. Yeah.
What you said, so Mendelssohn, when he wrote this at the age of 17, did he compose it for a piano? Did he compose it for an ensemble? Did he have that in mind?
So Mendelssohn actually worked through this piece. He started when he was 17, and he wrote it in both a 2-piano version where he and his sister performed it in their house. And then it was later performed by a full orchestra in his house. What a great thing to have an orchestra at your disposal. And then it was many years later. So he wrote the initial in 1826. He then came back to the work in 1842 after he was established. So he only wrote the overture first, and then the rest of the incidental music was written in 1842 and premiered in 1843. But what's wonderful is the way he takes the themes and the motives and the spirit from that overture and really weaves it through the entire work. And in fact, quoting in the finale where we have the women's chorus singing and the two soloists singing. He quotes directly from that opening overture.
Yeah.
So it's really nice how he tied the whole thing together, but it's a very, very inspirational work.
You know, and there's that famous film of A Midsummer Night's Dream in 1935 that Max Reinhardt directed, which is the Mendelssohn. It uses the Mendelssohn music, and your audience might enjoy it because Mickey Rooney is Puck. I mean, he's like the greatest Puck ever.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when I was doing research for this. You know, I was finding a bunch of different versions. I remember seeing that version, and people probably have some time to maybe check that out now.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's great. Well, listen, I want to thank both of you for participating in this interview with us today, and we thoroughly enjoyed having you work with the Allentown Symphony Orchestra. We hope to have you back in the future, and best wishes in all your future successes.
Thank you so much. It was such a great pleasure working with you in the orchestra. Oh, and hearing Timothy Chewy.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Amazing violinist. Amazing violinist.
Yes. And you are one of the best conductors that I have ever been able to watch do her craft. So thank you for that gift. You are just excellent. And I can't wait to be able to watch this myself, being a part of it, not being able to see it. I can't wait.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.